Hello and welcome to the JackCast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me, as usual, we have Matt Barocco. How are you, Matt?
Hey, Guto, you right?
Yeah, not too bad. Steve can't be with us tonight, so you're just going to have to put up with the two of us for a change. But we've got some nice stuff to discuss, mainly the fact that Swansea started off their championship campaign last weekend with a win away at Preston. It's 2013, Matt, was the last time we lost the opening game of the season. There are, I think, only about 3 or 4 teams in the entire Football League and Premier League who have a better opening day record than us since then. So it's continued this brilliant opening day trend we have.
It is nice, isn't it? Because you always go into the opening day and I think everyone across the country is the same, and they always go in and you have that hope. You know, you're going to see new players. You're going to see, normally you go down to the stadiums in the August sunshine and whatever, and you've got that kind of buzz to go to the season and to see what hopes you can realise and get crushed by October time normally. But so it's great to have that record where you go into it. We traditionally seem to be getting these wins every year now, or at least not losing. So you're not completely crushed by 5 o'clock on the first day. It's lovely. But we were discussing last week about how a 4-1 pre-season tends to play into the season, doesn't it? And so fingers crossed, the fact that we had a horrendous game in the lead up to this one bodes well for the season ahead.
Sure. Like, before we actually get on to discuss like the Swans, that is a good point, because I think a lot of us were worried by the fact that we'd not so much lost to Newport County, but the nature of the performance. And it wasn't strictly a pre-season match, obviously, because it was a competitive fixture. It was a cup match. So usually I'd say ignore all friendly results. They are irrelevant. There was something a little bit more relevant about this one because it was a competitive fixture. But the weekend's results really do show why we shouldn't really pay that much attention to it, because there were 6 championship teams who went out in the first round of the Carabao Cup to lower league opposition, including ourselves. 4 of them won on the opening day. So it does go to show, doesn't it, that what you do before that big league kickoff that does not necessarily indicate how you're going to do.
I think normally as well, don't you? You normally have your opening league game, and then maybe 2 or 3 of them. Then you have your opening cup game then. And so for it to start with a cup game this year, I think most teams, like you say, 6 championship teams went out to lower league opposition. I mean, that's a big tell for me that a lot of clubs like us treated it like the final pre-season fixture. No disrespect to the Cup or to Newport, but the way the fixtures lent themselves this year, and the fact that teams only had a month off, it meant that you couldn't have a full pre-season program. You couldn't players couldn't really switch off. They had to keep a certain level of fitness because we didn't have the 3 or 4 weeks building up to the season. That literally was your break.
It was a competitive friendly, wasn't it? Really,
exactly. You want to have that, don't you?
It was a bit like the Community Shield, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking of that actually when I was saying it. I was thinking you got that kind of, you got something on the line, but at the same time, nobody was really looking at that thinking, right, put all our eggs in this basket. It was more like, it was still kind of like trial thing. And again, I don't want to sound like bitter kind of after the fact and say, we weren't trying, because obviously it was a disgraceful performance. So we
had our best team out that we could have picked on that day as well. We did. It wasn't as if we made changes like we would usually make for the first round of the Carabao Cup, because there were 9 championship teams in total that exited in the first round this year, which is exactly the same as the previous year. The difference was that this year, if you look at the team selections, most of the teams who went out picked very strong sides. So that's the big difference between this season's Carabao Cup first round and the usual Carabao Cup first rounds.
And I think that lends itself to what you're saying as well, that it was being treated as the final pre-season. It was getting your first 11 up to speed, trying that new tactic that they've been talking about the last 2 weeks on the training field, etc. And it wasn't like you're playing your kids, you're giving your second goalkeeper a chance, etc. They were playing their starting 11s, everyone, because you wanted them up and firing for the start of the league the week later. So it kind of lends itself to that. I know probably coming across like a bit of a bitter kind of loser at the end of it.
You're denying Newport County their moment.
I know. All credit to Newport. They are giant killers anyway. No, we are giants. So they love the cup, and so okay, we're out, and that's a horrendous performance to go with it. But I think on reflection of it, it will have done us more good to kind of get that out of the way, so you kind of get that performance out of the way as if it was a last pre-season friendly, and the real business started on the weekend just gone, which as you say was the exact result we were hoping for.
Yeah, and do you think there was a big difference between performances, because the team was pretty similar to the one that played against Newport County? We had Cabango and Gehi and Roberts back, obviously, which made a big difference to the defence. But the midfield and attack, which had really done nothing against Newport County, was pretty much the same. Did you see? Was there a clear difference between the two performances?
Well, 1 to 11, completely chalk and cheese. I mean, you can start with the front 3 or 4 who did, as you say, nothing against Newport, and then all of a sudden you're seeing Jamal Lowe run the channel, so you kind of give that burst of energy, interlinking nicely with AU. AU was spraying balls left and right. You've got the movement there. You've got the anticipation and stuff, and obviously led to some great openings for Bidwell in the game, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Who himself, another player who had an absolutely fantastic game, man of the match for me. And then you can look at the other end of the pitch, and you can look at the back 5 or back 6 if you include Woodman, and you just think, wow, what, the team, okay, albeit it was a bit patched up for the Newport game, but there were still strong defenders in there who looked really weak against Newport, and yet against Preston they could have played for another hour. And I really felt that whilst we were sitting deep, and I hate that tactic of ours when we got a 1-goal lead to just invite pressure, it was one of those performances where you thought nothing's going to get past this back line. Cabango, Gehi, Roden were all solid as a rock, and I think I'm not the first, and I certainly won't be the last to say that back 3 triple between them is probably one of the strongest in the division, if not the strongest, as time will tell. It was just a phenomenal performance from the 3 of them. Gehi I'll single out in particularly for praise, because I think his transition, or his progression rather, from his first games here to where he is now is crazy. It's like a different player, absolute different player.
Do you know what? The Preston game was the first time that they have those 3 centre-backs, then Cabango, Roden and Gay, have played together, apart from like 14 minutes against Stoke last season. That's the only previous time they played together. And you just think, man, if they can stay fit, and if we can keep Roden, etc., and Cabango's been rumoured as well with a move away. Don't know how serious that speculation is, but if we can just keep them for this season, I'm not sure if there is a better... but if there is a better defence on paper in this entire division, I just think they are all players who are capable of playing at the highest level, the 3 of them. And against Preston, like you said, they never really looked that troubled. I thought they looked so tight, so disciplined. Their decision-making was always spot on. And Freddie Woodman had a very easy game. Really, really easy game. I can't remember Woodman being particularly stretched. I know that there was one save I think he had to make in the second half where he kind of had to make a block at reasonably close range. But apart from that, I mean, he had a very, very comfortable match at Deepdale, and that was down largely to the defence. And
he looked better as well in what he had to do, didn't he? I thought he looked more decisive. He didn't come out and catch everything, but when he came off his line, he got a hand to it. He made sure he punched out of his box.
You want to keep it to be authoritative. You want to
whatever he decides to do. Yeah, exactly. Follow through with it and make sure you do what you intend to do, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the key to confident goalkeeping. You just make a decision and you follow through with it.
Absolutely. And get ahead of myself here, but it was obviously that old Alex Ferguson quote as well, isn't it? That, attack wins you games, defense wins you titles. And I'm not saying for a second that we've got the championship in the bag, but it's important you start from the back, isn't it? And I want us to be. We got the players to be attacking and exciting, and certainly in this style formation that we've been playing now for the last 10 or so games, where we are playing with the wing backs, and that's creating so much movement across the midfield. It's making players have to find space, and it's just looking so much more fluid that I think the quality up there will sort itself out. That's good enough. That when you've got the formation to make the players fluid and move around, that the goals will come from that. And the other end of the pitch, you just want to stop. And that's what you scrape your 1-0s, because at the end of the day, all it says on the league table really is 1 game, 3 points to Swansea. And if you keep clean sheets, you don't lose games.
Well, the two teams that went up last season automatically were not the top scoring teams in the division, but they did have the best defences, or at least they were up there with the best defences. So that's key. I mean, the first half on Saturday, it wasn't a classic. I mean, the game as a whole, let's face it, was not a classic. But I thought the Swans edged it in the first half. We were the ones creating the half chances, and Preston never really looked like doing anything in that first half. Although I think both teams looked a little bit rusty, didn't really find any kind of flow. But I thought second half we actually came out the blocks with much more energy, much more creativity. I mean, we had a disallowed goal from Bidwell. I don't know who we've never actually heard. I don't think who was deemed offside, him or Lowe. But it didn't count. But it didn't really matter because shortly after, we scored what I thought was a really well worked goal, Matt.
It was, and I was speaking a little bit ago about playing those passes, and that was example of that. He's so good at finding those crossfield passes, and I think because he is known as, or he is understood to be, one of the most talented players in this division, he perhaps shouldn't be playing in this division. Teams can focus on him, and of course he finished last season as our top goal scorer. People are going to be in their pre-match talks identifying him as a threat. So him being able to switch it across like that, and again Bidwell, who was just he's had probably his best game for us, but in the last 6 or 7 games, that's actually a quite thing to say, because he has been consistently our best performer since the change in formation, certainly the best, most improved. So for him to, he's been bossing it lately, and he's found the space and he's put the ball across, and it's a debut goal, isn't it? So everyone loves to see a debut goal. It perhaps wasn't the cleanest finish he'll ever strike in the world, and maybe he's lucky he didn't get credit. It is an own goal actually, but no, it was it's all he wants is to see that ball hit the back of the net, and it did so, and it was the crucial goal as well, because as you say, the game didn't perhaps offer too many openings overall, and we nabbed the one that mattered.
I think it always looked like a match where one goal was going to make the difference, didn't it? I mean, look, you've said all there basically, but I just want to reiterate. I think IU's pass is criminally underrated for that goal. Bidwell deserves a lot of credit for putting in a fantastic ball, and of course, Gibbs White was making that run into the box, which is not necessarily something that every single midfielder would do, but he saw the opportunity and was there in the right place to bundle it in. But I thought IU's crossfield pass was one of the real moments of quality in the game, at least one of the best moments of attacking quality, because he's surrounded by players. You don't think he's going anywhere, but he just shifts it, gives himself that little bit of space, spins, and then plays an absolutely perfect 40 or 50 yard pass into the path of Bidwell. And in a game where both teams were playing it quite tight, and there wasn't really that much space, it took something like that just to create that space for a teammate to do something. And I thought it was fantastic. And I mean, the Swans had one big chance after that, the cross into Bidwell, which narrowly went over. But apart from that, Matt, it was just a case of parking the bus, really. I guess we shouldn't be massively surprised with that, because it's very early in the season. There's we haven't had a proper pre-season. Players are going to be rusty. They're not going to be up to full match fitness yet. It was just about seeing out the result after that, wasn't it?
I don't mind seeing out the result. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a fantastic trait to have. I think the timing of it is something that I bear umbrage with. I think I'd like to see us see out the result if it's the 87th minute onwards. If it's the 70th minute onwards, then I'm kind of thinking, well, if they do grab an equaliser now, this is one-way traffic. The momentum is all with them, and we're used to, for the last 15 minutes, sitting on our backsides, clearing everything. So are we really going to have the momentum to go up the other end then and grab another goal? So I like to have us playing in as far up the pitch as we can up until the last 5 or so minutes. Ideally, if you can, whenever we seem to be losing, the opposition are playing about an hour half and we can't get the ball back, and it's the dead end of the game. And when we are holding on to a lead, we are just doing just that. So we are clinging on to dear life. So it does feel a little bit like we get the shitty end of the stick, whichever way we look at it. But the important thing is that we see it out, and we did see it out. There was some fantastic blocks. I think, was it Grimes made one incredible block off a dipping volley or half volley. I can't remember what it was.
Basically, Grimes, I think it was, who sprinted out to the edge of the box.
That's right.
Threw himself in front of the ball. That was
that was going in, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't think Grimes had his best game on Saturday, but that was a real moment where you thought, wow, fair play to him, putting his body on the line. And there were a couple of instances like that where the players really did stand up and showed no fear, basically, when it came to putting their bodies on the line. But I mean, we touched on it earlier, Matt. I wasn't ever massively concerned that we were going to concede. Obviously, it only takes a second to score a goal. It only takes one moment of magic, and it would have been 1-1. But I was pretty relaxed watching that game. I didn't think we were ever looking stretched in any way. I trusted Roden, Gay and Cabango to win every header which went into the box. We kept our shape very well, and Preston didn't cause us any problems.
No, and that is exactly what happened. Is you rightly pointed out, is because we were so compact and so deep, there was no option for Preston to play it through us, because we had that flat back five, and then we had the midfield duo sitting there, and the front players were trying to provide some sort of outlet, albeit we were dropping deeper and deeper. And I think we'd made a couple of I think we'd taken Low off at that point as well, hadn't we? So we were making a few defensive substitutions. I think Routledge had come on to see out the end of the game up front, didn't he? So the way it was panning out, Preston couldn't get through our line, so they had to put balls in the box. The only way you can bypass 11 men sitting in front of you, basically, is to put it in the air. And of course, that's meat and drink for the back three that we had in the centre of defence. So it kind of works in that regard. If you've got the height and the physical presence in there, and you've got the commanding leadership, I think is perhaps the word I want to use, because all three of them, I think, Rodon in particular, Gehi is an absolute monster in there, and Cabango will get there. I think he's got all the qualities. He's perhaps can be occasionally being a bit lax at times, a little bit rusty, but he's got everything going for him. He's like, he's like a young Ashley Williams in there. I can see him going from strength to strength and becoming a seasoned international for Wales and racking up tons of caps, and he's got a hell of a future ahead of him.
Obviously, the three of them are at different stages in their development, but I think you're right in saying that they're three players who aren't afraid to take on responsibility. They're not happy to just sit back and take instructions. They're willing to. They will take that responsibility, and that shows an authority in itself. And
but what I like as well, and just to bring it quickly back to that before we move on with it, is that none of them are the alpha in there. So I'll explain this in the most easiest example. If you had Mike van der Horn in there, he would be the lead. He would be the John Terry, if you like, of the back line, where he would be expected to take the responsibility and guide the others around him, because he would be the experienced one with all that Premier League experience under his belt, etc. Now, with those three, between the three of them, they've got their roles, they've got their responsibilities. There's no one barking at the others forever, but they know what they're doing. And I see all three of them taking their own initiatives, which is nice in a respect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to look at a couple of the players in more detail, we're going to specifically look at the new players, because it was the league debut, of course, for a few of our new signings. How did you think they did? We won't speak so much about Woodman and Gay because we've got a decent idea of what they can offer because they've been here on loan already. But in midfield, in particular, we had Corey Smith and Morgan Gibbs-White, and then we had Jamal Lowe up front. Which of those three stood out for you most, do you think?
I liked Gibbs White, and I'm not saying it just because he scored. I think he adds that attacking verve in the final third. You sometimes need, you always need really. You really want that option, someone who can play it into the front man's feet, and he showed that a few times in a game with few chances. He was in good positions to pick it up, lay it off, try and play it on for someone else, and I liked seeing the fruition, the very early shoots of what it could be with him behind AU and Lowe. And Lowe showed a lovely little turn of pace in the first half. He shifted it onto his left, I think, and pulled it wide. But he'd created what was practically a one-on-one for himself on the edge of the box before, which was never really a great opportunity before he'd shifted his body weight. So he's another player. He's got that over half a yard. I think he's very, very dangerous. He's obviously got the longevity pace as well, but I'd like to see those sorts of blasts of intuition where he was showing bits of that. I like. So those two I thought were impressive. Corey Smith was doing the stuff which we were hoping he would do in the middle of the park. He was doing the dirty work for us, and I thought he did a good job at it. So I was. And we talk about the returning loanees and stuff. They had a good game as well. Gehi has had a good game, and Woodman was completely different player to the one I played against Newport. So I was happy. There was no one now you would go, do you know what, that player is not going to be here very long because he was outstanding. They were all very solid starting performances and plenty to build on with them as well. I thought there was nothing there you would be particularly concerned about with any of them. And I think one of our Twitter responses said his favourite new player was the new Jake Bidwell we seem to have recruited in the recent games, which is a fair point. I absolutely think he's just a different player. This formation suits him more than it suits anyone. And there was a point, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it a little bit earlier on, but there was a point in the first half where Connor Roberts had it on the right, and he swung in a beautiful cross, and Bidwell attacked it with a volley on the far post.
Yes.
And that was just like, I love that. I love the fact those were our two full-backs, and they were the attack. It was one crossing in for the other, and I just thought, I love to see that, and knowing that you've got Cabango, Roden and Gehi sitting at the back providing the cover, I want to see that all season. I want to see them two running up the wing, causing the chaos we know they can, and just creating mayhem for the opposition, because it's just two more players the opposition have to deal with. We don't need to say to Swans fans who are listening to this, the difference in your Jake Bidwells and your Connor Roberts now to last season, when they were sitting back and they were getting pelters from the fans, the pair of them, because they weren't effective going forward, and the formation didn't allow them to go forward. And look at them now. They're two of our standout players, and they're two of the first names on the team sheet.
I think speaking about, Bidwell deserves so much praise because, like you said, for much of last season, he and Connor Roberts were both having difficult seasons, really. They weren't really clicking going forward, and they were leaving gaps at the back and being exposed in that way. And it was uncomfortable to watch them. With Connor Roberts, I think a lot of fans said, do you know what, if you just played a different way, you would get so much more out of Connor. So perhaps it's not really a surprise that now that we play with five at the back, we're seeing a lot more of him, especially going forward. But Bidwell, I'll be honest, I never ever looked at him and thought, do you know what? With a different formation, you'd see a different Jake Bidwell.
I didn't see the engine in him at all. I didn't see it, and now I'm seeing it, and I'm like, wow, he has got legs on him, hasn't he? He gets up and down.
It's brilliant to see, and his demeanor has just changed entirely. He looks so much more positive. He's so keen to get involved now. He's busting a gut to join in moves. He looks faster because he just looks that little bit more confident and a little bit happier as well in the way that he's playing. And we're seeing a player now who still pitches in defensively. He still does his defensive duties, but going forward, he's a real weapon, and that helps the rest of the team as well, because we've spoken about it before. If you've got those wing backs bombing on, they give you that width, they give you better options. So the midfielders have more options on the ball. They're not having to think, who gets the ball. They know instantly there is a pass there if they switch it to the right or switch it to the left, because you're going to have Roberts on the right and Bidwell on the left joining the attacks, and that's why they are among our most improved players. And Bidwell, I think, got a lot of votes for man of the match on Saturday, and it's hard to argue with that, really. In terms of the new players, from my point of view, I thought they all had decent games. The one that actually stood out most for me was Corey Smith, because I thought he just gave us something that we don't always see from our midfielders. He was just there to protect the defence.
He did the ugly stuff brilliantly, didn't he?
Exactly. He was full of energy, covered a lot of ground. His passing was pretty solid, I thought, in a match where the passing was not always particularly good. And he got forward once or twice as well. So it wasn't as if he was just sitting there the whole game in front of the defence. He contributed in attack too. But the main thing you want from him is just that energy, that little bit of combative nature in midfield, the one that's going to make life difficult for the opposing midfielders.
And also to give a license then, isn't it, to your Gibbs Whites and to your Grimes to move on with the ball, because you've got the spoiler, you've got your Leon Britton type. I'm not going to say you've got your Leon Britton in there, because you will not get a Leon Britton in there again. He was a 1 in a million. But you've got your type in there, haven't you? You've got the one. You want a spoiler in there. You want someone who you can start your attacks from. So I absolutely agree with you. I thought he did the ugly stuff superbly.
Just before we move on, I mean, the passing was pretty poor on the whole. And one reason for that was our ridiculous away kit. I mean, this was getting absolutely slated. It was something that crossed my mind when the kits were first released. I do see this sometimes, and I never understand it.
It's not different enough, is it?
You see it from clubs. Clubs bring out these kits and thinking, wow, that there's not that much difference in the colour. And if you come up against, certain teams, both the home and away kit are going to be a little bit, unsuitable. And that's what happened on Saturday. We've got this, turquoise and peach, they've called it, the away kit. It's horrible to start with. It looks disgusting.
A decent ref would have made Preston play in their away kit, and we would have got a fine from the league or something. Because
can you force a team to change kits in those situations? I'm not up to date on the rules.
No, I don't. I absolutely have no idea. I just think with it, what are your kits ones? Oh, we've got a white and we've got a off white. It's like, well, no, he can't do that.
White.
Yeah,
it's like a white that's been soaking in the canal overnight,
It's not. I don't hate the kit. I know a lot of people do, but what I will say is it's completely inappropriate as a second kit. It needs to be the third, if that. It needs to be your if you want to put it there as your showpiece, whatever, the one you roll out three or four times a season. But you need to have something significantly different, and we saw that, and that was just, it was horrible. It certainly can account for some of the misplaced passes. It was horrendous to watch on TV.
I got a headache watching it because I had to concentrate so hard to work out who was a Swan and who was playing for Preston. You couldn't have commentated on that game, could you? Because you'd have been there going, that's a lovely ball. Oh no, it's absolutely terrible. Well, it could have been terrible from the start. I just didn't know what colour shirt it was going to at the other end of the pitch. So it is one of those things. One thing as well before we wrap up, we finally broke the ex-player curse, Guto. Yes,
finally.
Scott Sinclair, who was seemingly destined to score against us, left the pitch without having even a sniff. I mean, if ever you want an omen that the Swans are going up, a former player didn't score against us. This is our season, boys. This is our season.
Oh, I
Um,
couldn't believe it. I thought there's one thing. Well, I know, the surefire thing after last week's podcast is put your mortgage on Sinclair scoring, because if there's one thing that I can't do, it's bet. So if you bet on it and it doesn't happen, then it's great. So I'm chuffed that I lost money.
Very good, very good. Well, we did actually have a question asked to us earlier. It was by Ryan Phillips on Twitter. And basically, Ryan's asked us, is there a worry that the only two players... well, he asked two questions, actually. We'll start off with the first one, which is related to Preston. Is anyone concerned about how our style is being eroded? Great result Saturday, but can't help but feel since Cooper took over, our style has fallen dramatically. This is something we've discussed a lot, Matt. What's your take on it after seeing the Preston match? Because it wasn't good to watch. There's no doubt about that, and Preston contributed to that too. But it was defensive. The passing wasn't great. There weren't too many chances. And that kind of match is not unheard of under Cooper, I think it's fair to say. What's your take on it?
No, I agree. You could just pick blindly one of our podcasts over the last 12 months and you'll find some mention of it in every one of them. We don't particularly love Cooper's style of play. Maybe the timing of the question is maybe slightly odd to me, or the fact that perhaps it's our fault because we don't often get round to asking fans for their input on the actual content of the pod. So maybe that's the problem here, because that question could have come in for all of 8 months of last season and we'd have gone on a 20-minute rant about it. and it's only since perhaps, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 games or whatever that we've been playing the new formation that we've actually started to enjoy watching football again. By and large, last season was a write-off. It was horrendous to watch. It was just boring. We had a really good August where we were clinical, and then after that, right the way up until after the lockdown, we became an absolute travesty, and we were earning plaudits undeservedly for this, some style which I wasn't seeing, and I was just thinking this is really poor to watch. So and as you know, I lost interest in a lot of it. It was just boring. And obviously after the lockdown, then we wrote this 5-3-2 and the injury crisis forced it. And we got dealt that lucky hand then, where we saw what we could be. And the Robertson Bidwell thing has changed us completely, because I'm a big critic, or I was a big critic, shall I say, of Matt Grimes last season. And I thought he was completely not playing as a captain. He wasn't leading, he wasn't directing the play, he wasn't pulling the strings. And now I'm seeing, maybe against Preston, perhaps not the best example of it because the game was very tight, but because he's got Bidwell and Roberts flanking up and down, he's got options now. He's got the out ball. He's got someone hugging the touchline either side, rather than having your Ayus, who was playing on the left for parts of it, or your Salinas, who played on the left for parts of last season, who are constantly trying to come inside and narrow the pitch. And as a centre midfielder, then you really don't have an option to spray a ball anywhere to create space, because there's no one outside of 30 yards away from you. So having the wingers, wing backs who are just going to hug that touchline all game, gives us that outlet, and it gives our players more of an attacking verve and more movement up there, more opportunities to create. So compared to last season, or for the vast majority of last season rather, I'm all for this, and I take a case with people, and I asked the question a few weeks ago. People who would say we're going to revert back to the flat back four and stuff. I hope they were saying it because they felt it was a necessity with our personnel, rather than that's what they would prefer. Because I cannot, for the life of me, make a single argument to returning to the formation we were playing for the majority of last season. This formation makes us better. The players are better. What did we say last season, Guto, wasn't it? Like, name one player that has not regressed under Cooper that had progressed under Potter the year before. And I thought so many players had gone worse last year, and now we're seeing those players come back into their own. And you're looking at your Jake Bidwells and your Connor Roberts, who who looking poor for the most of the last season, looking better now. Grimes is looking a lot better now. He's got the out ball, and even going down to the likes of AU, who carried us for so much of last season, but looks happier in this style. He looks happier to have that movement around him when he can perform. We're stretching teams now, aren't we? So he's got the space, the space to do what he can do, which is great. I completely take Ryan's point, and I do think our style of play was so much better under Potter, and Preston was not an easy game to watch, give or take the kit clash. But actually, this formation for me, at least, is a step in the right direction. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Preston match wasn't great to watch, but I don't think that's necessarily what we should judge the style on, if I'm being honest, because I think there were circumstances which forced that kind of style. I mean, the players aren't match fit yet. You can see that. You can see that across the championship. No clubs played particularly fluid football over the weekend. Everybody was just a little bit rusty, not really up to speed yet. More mistakes. I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen the stats from the Wycombe versus Rotherham game, but the ball was only in play for about 35 minutes apparently, and like the pass completion rate, I think Wycombe's pass completion rate was like 39% or something, which I've never heard of before. I mean that's just disgraceful at any level. And I think what was the stat they had? I think the most long balls in the championship, but I think the fewest accurate long balls. So, you know, if they were just pumping long balls aimlessly for the match.
You won't be surprised to know that that was beaten the previous record, featured a certain club. I can't think of their name now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise anyone to know that the previous record was held by Cardiff.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be desperate to retake that record soon.
I'm sure they will.
But I mean, yeah, the entire league was rusty. I think if we're still playing the kind of football that we saw against Preston in a few weeks, when we get midway through October, then yeah, maybe then we'll say, okay, this may be the style that we're trying to play now. But I think, you know, like you said there, Matt, last season it wasn't great to watch for most of the season. But once we switched to a back five, I actually did enjoy watching us play. I did think we played with more attacking intent, with more positivity, with more creativity. There was much better balance to the team. The individual players were playing much better. And yeah, like I said, I did enjoy watching it. We scored lots of goals. Yeah, and if we play like that this season, I will be I will really enjoy watching the Swans. It's very dissimilar. It's not in any way similar to the way Potter played in terms of sort of formation we usually played, the focus on possession, the style of passing, etc. Emphasis on various aspects. It's nothing like Potter. It's not the Swansea loner style that some people go on about. But you can play good football without dominating possession. You know, there's more than one way to play good football, and we're not going to be seeing the Potter type football. And I loved watching the football he played under Potter. I was watching Salina's goal against Man City the other day when he left, and I was just in awe. I really was. I thought, wow, that was a brilliant season to watch us play. But I've really enjoyed watching a lot of the football that we've played under Cooper for the final month of last season. So it all depends on whether he keeps playing like that, and if we can keep this set of players together, there's no reason why we can't play that way again this season. I think that will be the aim. So while we're not going to be seeing the kind of possession-based football that we saw under Martinez, under Rodgers, and Laudrup, and under Potter more recently, I still think there's a chance that we will see some good football this season.
Do you know what? And three of them, perhaps Martinez, Potter, and to an extent Laudrup. The difference between them, well, there's many differences, but one of the things we always had was a soft underbelly. We could dominate games with 65% possession and lose 2-0 and we did several times. I remember the Rotherham game where I think we lost 2-1. I think we conceded 2 penalties in the last 5 minutes. That was under Potter. And I just look at these games and I think it's all well and good, battering teams, and we did that. You can go back to the Martinez time as well, where you were just thinking, if games were fair and if there was any justice in the world, we would win every game. Because if you look at it and say who deserves to win this game, Swansea every time. You've got to be able to do the gritty stuff, and sometimes you could be accused us of not being able to get that.
That era, I guess, weren't we? The stats say that we were miles better than every team we played, but the scoreline said differently, because if we were that good, we would not have lost as many games as we did, even though we were still, of course, a very good team back then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've got to be able to have some resoluteness, that's not a word, about you. You've got to have you've got to be strong. You've got to be able to see things out and have that ugly side nailed down as well. And I think we've discussed almost every aspect of that in the opening half hour or so of this podcast. And I think that's, I don't want us to lose the ingenuity and the invention up front. Keep that, let them have that license which they've got, with the 2 wing backs offering the support as well, and then in behind it then, as you say, with your Corey Smith and your Matt Grimes anchoring the midfield and the back 3 then sitting back there, then we look going up the pitch like we've got the protection behind, and we look defending like we've got out balls up the pitch. So there's both sides of it. That's what you need, don't you? You need that healthy balance. And without getting ahead of myself, early signs are, we may be close to getting that balance.
Yeah, definitely. We've had a few more questions on Twitter, so we'll just rattle through these. John Mainwaring asks, how many signings do we need to make? He says centre-back and 1 striker at least, but likely additional cover, a striker and left-back needed too. I think we discussed this last week. I don't think our opinions have changed, Matt, unless you have.
No. Centre-back cover definitely, because we need to have the option to play this formation for as long as we can. We cannot afford an injury to one of our 3 centre-backs at the moment. And, well, when you look at it, Joe Rodon, as fantastic as he is injury prone. Ben Cabango's very young. Touch wood about Mark Gehi, he stays fit and strong. But at the moment, we need those 3 to stay fit. So ideally, we get someone else in and we don't have to resort to the likes of playing Kyle Norton, who's, puts in a shift wherever he goes. Newport aside, where he maybe had a poor game, but he'll rather him not have to slot in there and fill a gap. And worse still, if you have to put Bidwell in there, which we've done a few times, you not only have a worse defender in there, but you lose the attacking threat that he can pose at the other end of the pitch. So you're kind of doubling yourself over there. So really speaking, yes, we want that centre half cover. We do need a striker as well, and obviously any action and movement in the transfer window needs to be addressed and rectified as well. If we do get bids, as you were discussing early on, the likes of AU, who's in his final year now, Joe Rodon, those players who may attract bids later on in the window, we need to have backup plans, and it really will be time then for Andy Scott to earn his corn.
Mm-hmm. I've got no problem with Norton playing as a centre back. By the way, I thought he did a good job there last season. Interestingly, in the pre-season games, I think Jay Fulton's played a few games at centre, yeah. So perhaps he's being seen as a backup as well. Which again, I don't think any of us would really want to. We wouldn't want to resort to that, if we're being honest. I like Jay Fulton, but I'm not sure if he's entirely suited to being a centre back. More questions. Another one from Ryan Phillips. Is there worry that the only 2 players we have paid money for, Asoro and Peterson, have either found themselves moved on or frozen out? What is our head of recruitment doing? I can't remember his name, Ryan says. They're not the only players we've paid for in that time. We did pay for Selena, who's obviously gone to Dijon now for a similar amount of money.
Barry Mackay cost us a couple of quid, didn't he?
I know. I think Byron. No, yeah, he did. He cost us about $500,000, I think.
Yeah, I'll just double
And,
check that now with
and
my friend
I
Google.
think I think Declan John may have cost us a nominal fee as well, possibly. Like about 50k, something like that. It's ridiculous saying that 50k is nominal, but that's football for you. But all of those, Pettersson's back, but all those other ones we've named are not going to be are probably not going to be playing for the club this season, and somebody has actually raised the question. A few people actually have raised the question online about our recruitment under Graham Potter when he first arrived. Now, how many of those signings were Potter signing, and how many of them were the club signings? I don't know, but
I'm pretty sure Joel Asoro came in before Potter.
Possibly, yeah.
I think he came in, quite early on. I think that was Hugh Jenkins signing after Sunderland got relegated, if I recall.
Yeah, it is weird. Like our transfer activity that summer was so weird looking back, because obviously we were desperate to sell players, and just get them off the wage list as by any means possible. But we were still bringing in players, still paying cash for some of them. I mean, Salina, we paid $3 million, it could have risen to $4 million with add-ons. I mean, what were we doing paying money for a player at that time when we were in such financial difficulty? I have no idea. It's just a weird summer. Let's face it, our transfers for a number of years now have not been up to scratch, if we're being honest. So I guess you could say it's not specifically related to the ones that we've made since relegation. You could look back further than that and say there's been a lot of wasted money, which is why we had to sell so many players when we were relegated. I mean, as for what's our head of recruitment doing, Andy Scott, truth is we don't know, do we? We don't know how much influence he has in signings. I mean, the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White, who has worked with Cooper before, a lot of the loan signings that we brought in last season, they're down to the fact that he's worked with them at under 17 level, you would imagine. They're very much Cooper signings. But, who made the Corey Smith signing? I don't know. Jamal Lowe. I don't know who sniffed that one out, thought, there may be a bargain in this one for us. So it's hard to say really which one's Andy Scott's signings and which ones are Cooper's, especially since Cooper has probably played more of an obvious role in our transfers than any manager that we've had for absolutely ages, possibly since Laudrup.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with it. As you say, Laudrup would be the last, because he was the last manager to have any control over it. And it was towards the latter stages of Laudrup's time here that Hugh Jenkins decided to, obviously, enough is enough, and he wanted the control. And after that, every manager just bowed to the whims of our ex-chairman. So I think the reality is, you go back as far as Laudrup, and there are obviously very clear signs when Cooper brings someone in, because he's a England under 21 international that's worked with him previously, and it's on loan inevitably. But it's almost got two head of recruitments here, haven't we? We got someone who's able to just pluck players from the Premier League. God, that's a bit of a mouthful. Just to say, right, okay, I worked with you before. He's not going to get game time at Chelsea, at Man United, at Liverpool, etc. But he knows me. He wants to come and play football for me. Let's have him for a year. And last season will have done us no harm whatsoever in that regard, because of the way we've brought on the likes of Ryan Brewster and others really, who come in and out, and all of a sudden, it was largely spoken about even as late as when we signed him in January last season, that Brewster had potential, but he'd just come back from a serious knee injury and he needed game time if he was going to be able to, make it really. And now people are just, diving on him, trying to sign him, and Liverpool don't know whether to loan him or sell him or put in a buyback clause or whatever it is. But he's hot property now, so it'll look good for us that this is what happens. You send a player down here, and I'm sure Mark Gehey will be in the same boat if hopefully we can keep him for the entirety of the season, and there's no clause in there that can get them recalled, because these players are adding.
Yeah, and final question, which has been submitted by listeners. Hugh Mellor asks, what about a discussion on the new Trevor Birch? Can't remember the bloke's name, as we've literally heard nothing from him since his appointment.
That's right.
Is it a bit weird that I think it's Julian Winter, is it?
Yeah.
I struggle to remember his name since he joined. And you're right, we have not heard anything from him. I mean, that's obviously, Matt, a little bit strange because I don't know if he has started immediately or anything, but we've heard very little from him yet. Possibly strange. I mean, we've been used under to Trevor Birch to a lot of communication from our chairman. Well, we discussed it very, very quickly on the night that he was appointed because all of us were kind of uncertain back then. We've heard various things since then, but have you sort of made any more concrete judgment on the man since we brought him on board?
Well, because when we were discussing it, I think you broke it in the podcast, didn't you, that it had happened? Or Steve may have, I'm not sure. But yeah, absolutely something that we were like, great. They've acted quickly. It sounds like Birch has handed over the reins. And happy days, and it looked like everything had been done professionally and above board, and so we were relatively happy. And obviously, since the dust has settled on it, there's been murmurs that perhaps he wasn't the recommended man to take over from Birch, by Birch, not the one that Birch wanted to take over for himself. And obviously Huddersfield fans were less than we talked about his record, having seen them up in the most unlikely promotion to the Premier League, etc., and how good that must have been for him, and how good a job he did. Well, Huddersfield fans aren't as gracious about him, looking at their comments, and they were absolutely delighted when he decided to step down. So you have to take that on board. As much as you want to judge someone on their own merit here, you have to take on board that, you know, perhaps they haven't had the greatest of times elsewhere and not particularly fondly thought of. Not going to write the guy off, far from it. And we were spoiled with Trevor Birch, and time and again, Guto, how many times did we say Trevor Birch is the best thing about this club right now? Because we had regular updates, frank, honest. You know, he was being straight up with us, wasn't he? And we were like, wow, I love this. I can get on board with this. And he became a real odd, because you don't normally get him. He became a real fan's favourite, didn't he? So I haven't got any... my early opinions, if you're going to push me either way, is it's not going to be anything as joyous as the Trevor Birch era. But we haven't heard from him, and I would have expected he would wanted to have made an effort early doors to try and win the fans over and get him on side. Maybe that's not his style, but we'll see. We'll see. I won't completely castrate the bloke yet. I just want to hear from him.
I'm sure he'll be glad to hear that you're not castrated.
Yeah.
That's a threat. That's a threat if things don't go well. We do not advocate castration, literally, on this podcast. On this pod, we don't just ask for your questions. We also ask our own questions. And this week's Twitter question was related to the fact that the Swans are going to play their first home game of the season on Saturday, but of course there will be no fans there, unfortunately. This is something we've all become used to, but it's still something that we miss. So we've asked you, what do you miss about going to the Liberty? This question was a bit late going out, so we haven't had that many responses, but we've had a couple. John Mainwaring said, just the match day experience, going with my dad and enjoying a pint, even if it's flat and warm at times. Burnt pie too at times. That's nobody's ever sort of been longing for flat pints as much as football fans have in this period. I would actually pay outrageous amounts for a Liberty Stadium pint right now, even more than they actually charge at the Liberty. Hugh Mellor, no, he doesn't answer that question, but Kevin Whitcomb says that he misses the banter with the fans and insulting the refs. Again, what we would all give to insult a ref again. Downtown Howell Brown says that he's missing the social aspect of having cans in the car park before the game and a half-time pint. Not missing the football as much, though. And I think, actually, there are a lot of people who will kind of feel like that. Like, it's the social aspect of things that they miss more than the actual matches themselves. Because football matches are social occasions, let's face it. Steve can't join us, but he has answered this question, saying he misses the legend who does the "Come on, City" cry in the East Stand. Maybe a little bit of sarcasm in that, but maybe Steve is genuinely missing the guy.
He does love him.
He does love him.
He loves him, and he'll say that.
There you go.
He's got his own. He's got a very, very high opinion of him. He does love him. To be fair.
Plenty of love for him there. I mean, Matt, there are a million and one things that we miss, but give me like an idea of the kind of things that you really wish you'd be doing this Saturday instead of sitting down on the sofa to watch the Swans.
We don't normally spend a great deal of time talking about other people's pieces of work, but Stuart James, I think, did a fantastic one in The Athletic last week. And I think the reality of the situation is, to people who don't like football and will never get it, because to them it's going to watch in the freezing cold, in the rain, in the dark, in the drab, in the winter months, etc., going to watch people kick a ball about, and it's just, and you can lose, you come on, whatever, but it's not that. To be honest with you, the actual football match for me, as I've gotten older, has dropped down a little bit on my list of priorities of the day, because the day is what it is. It's the going to the pub beforehand with your like you said, like John said, with his dad or with some mates, and sitting in the pub in the same place you always sit, seating people you don't even know their names, but you talk to them every week and you have a good laugh with them, but you're always having you always a giggle, the pints are flowing, it's everyone's in good spirits, isn't it? It's like you can't really explain it. It's everyone's there, it's nice atmosphere, you've got the early game on the TV, everyone's in good spirits, laughs and jokes, and you walk to the ground, you've got the pre-match pint in the stand if you have one, and then you've got the half-time pint, and then after the game, win, lose, we're on the booze, you go into the pub after the game, and you break down minute by minute, more so than we even do on this podcast. You break down that game, you break down everything that went right, everything that went wrong, why you're such a better manager than the one we've got at the moment. During the game, you're shouting abuse at the ref, you're shouting abuse at the linesman, the away fans, whatever. Everything about the day makes the day. By the time you come home and you stumble home and you switch the TV on to catch Match of the Day or the Football League show, whatever, you've had your day. You've been out for countless hours to watch what was a 90-minute match that you can't really remember much of anymore, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you've just had a great day, and that comes around once a fortnight. And you could give me every Swans game for the rest of the time free on my TV, and I trade it in tomorrow to go down to the Liberty with a packed Liberty and enjoy the pubs before and after the game and the half-time pint, as Howell Brown said. Everything about it, Guto. I mean, it's great, isn't it? The match day experience, it's called, isn't it? I think that's what they label it. But everything about that is just, you look forward to it from the moment you wake up on a Saturday morning, don't you? Those Saturday 3 o'clocks are special.
Perfectly put. Absolutely perfectly put. I mean, it's like you said, like people who don't like football will think it's bonkers, some of the things we list. I mean, I was discussing this with my wife over tea tonight, and I said, like, we're going to be discussing on the pod tonight what are the things we're missing about going to the game. And one of the things I miss is when I catch a train, you go over the bridge and you can see the Liberty, and it just gets you pumped up for the match when you see that. And she just looked at me as if I was some kind of just idiot.
What sort of time do you cross the bridge? Are there fans lingering around the stadium at that point? Is there a bit of an atmosphere?
No, we usually catch a train from Cardiff at 10 to 11.
Oh,
so
okay. It's quite early then.
Yeah, it's before midday that we cross that bridge. We've usually had 2 bottles by then, which is a bit ridiculous, really. But again, that's one of the things I miss. For me, I mean, I live in Cardiff these days. My brother does as well. And last year, my sister started her first year in university in Cardiff. So the three of us are in Cardiff. My parents obviously still live in Yslavera. So the only time we really see each other as a family is at Swansea games. We didn't even see each other, all of us, together at Christmas this year. So I mean, that's one of the things I really look forward to as a game is the three of us get off the train in Swansea, obviously, and we meet up with my parents and cousins, etc., who've caught the bus down, and we'll just go on a little pub crawl going from the station down through Landor. I miss the Villiers. The Villiers is I mean, if anybody hasn't been there, it's just the grottiest of pubs. It really is. But you miss it. It's a good match day pub. You go in there and the TV's on, and you can, get quite cheap booze there, etc. Maybe play a game of darts before you move on to the Smiths, and then the Smiths is always packed before a game, and there's always a good buzz there. And then that walk down to the stadium is one of the special things. I think whoever you support, that walk to the stadium is one of the things that people love. Even in sort of pouring rain, there's something that just gets you excited when you're walking there alongside thousands of other fans down the same road, all going to the same place. One of the things I miss is floodlights. I guess it's not as relevant to this time of year, but there's something really cool about, on a dark night, say, walking down, you can just see the lights illuminating the sky really from a distance. And then when you get in and the pitch is beautifully lit, there's something special about that, even on those horrendous cold Tuesday nights when you draw 0-0 against QPR and you think, what am I doing here? You turn up to those games because you do still get that feeling. I mean, in the match, you miss the chanting. You miss I missed climbing the stairs. I miss just the whole pre-match ritual. I even miss, like, when I don't catch the train, when say work means I can't be there as early as I'd like, and I have to drive down. I miss popping into KFC for a quick bite to eat before the game. Things like that are just part of the routine. They're gone now, and it's and sadly it's probably going to be a long time until normality returns to a degree where we can actually enjoy all of those things. But it says a lot, doesn't it, that we asked this question and nobody answered, saying, "Oh, I really miss seeing the goals go in," or something like that. And no, obviously we do all miss celebrating goals, but the things that many of us miss aren't actually related to football in any way. They are things, in many cases, that we could still do now to one extent or another, although it may not feel the same. But that's the beauty of football. It is a communal event. It's not just a match. You just don't just turn up, watch 11 men kick a ball around, and then go home after it. It does absorb you, and it's a cultural thing, and it's an addiction. And
I think I feel a large degree of sympathy for fans who don't support their local team, and so they don't, by whatever reason, choice or family supporters and stuff, whatever reason it might be, but they don't get to do that regularly. And some fans never actually go to see the team they support, and that a lot of fans don't, and that is something that must really be like, just do it. Don't even care about the football match. It's do the things where you've got grown men and teenagers mingling in the only environment you'll ever see them mingling, chatting to each other, don't know each other, but they're chatting, the pints are flowing, and all walks of life are just at the bar, and it's just great. It's literally, as you say, it's a communal event. It's just, you can't replace it, you can't replicate it. And you're right, we could do it, and it wouldn't be the same unless we were heading down to the stadium at 20 to 3 afterwards. But this is the thing, isn't it? There is some news, I suppose, which came out today, Guto, that perhaps there is the start of a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, the EFL have announced that they are testing fans in stadiums this weekend. So a couple of select grounds in each division have been selected. There were three originally earmarked for this weekend at Luton, Middlesbrough, and Norwich. Luton have pulled out because they say they are not going to be ready to go ahead with it. I thought Luton was a bit of a strange decision anyway because it must be one of the smallest grounds in the Championship. You'd have thought they'd test it out at the bigger grounds first of all, but there we go. But I mean, they're only allowing 1,000 fans each into to each of these games, Matt. But it's reassuring. It's a sign of it's a promising sign. Hopefully, it's a sign that the Swans are going to be trialing this kind of thing as well in the near future. I mean, we're a long way off packed stadiums returning, but even if there are just 1,000 or two allowed in for every game for the first few months, at least it's something. At least we get some kind of taste of it, even though obviously it will be weird, wouldn't it, if going into watch football in that kind of sanitized environment.
Oh, it doesn't appeal to me. I'm only interested in the end goal because going in when you've got 1,000 people in there, imagine the amount of space they can put between you. Imagine celebrating a goal. You've got to have no one within 5 meters of you. And you're celebrating a goal. You're just jumping up and down on your own like a wally.
You got to run like 2 meters to rugby tackle the person next to you.
And then you're getting ejected because you just spread COVID, mate. So you're not allowed to go anywhere near anyone else. So I think the actual idea of that doesn't appeal. It's just a nice or a good thing in the sense of that's got to be the first step, isn't it? You get 1,000 people in, then you say, right, okay, we'll take each ground to 25% capacity of whatever capacity that may be. So, and I don't think you're going to have away days for maybe a couple of years, or at least the full season, because they're going to get the home fans in. They certainly don't want people travelling around the country, so they're going to keep the home fans in, and the away end is going to be used as another area that they can put home fans dotted around. So away days is another topic we could talk about, and I'm sure if Steve was on, KFC would pop up in that one as well. But yeah, I think it's the first step, isn't it, to having fans back. But we're at the mercy of this, and until there's an acceptance that this is the new normal, or there is some breakthrough, then I think this is the way it's going to be. And it's sad because everything we just, we talk nostalgia there about football as if it hadn't happened in 20 years, but it does feel like a bloody long time ago that things were normal, doesn't it? And
do you know what? I was on the phone to my mother the other day, and she reminded me that before we played against West Brom in the last match that we played before lockdown, she wasn't sure whether she was going to go or not. She had a lot of work on, etc. And I said, "Oh, come on, this may be the last time that we get to see the Swans for quite a while." I did not foresee at that time that it would be, quite so long. I'll be honest. I was not ready for that kind of gap. And if you told me back then, you're going to be in September and you'll have no idea still when you're going to be allowed back in, I would have said, what? How the hell am I going to cope with that?
I was going to say, had I known at West Brom, I think I did have a few drinks anyway, but that would have been an almighty blowout, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? You'd have been turning up to the pub at 9 a.m. As soon as they opened the doors, you'd have been there, and they'd have been kicking you out of the rail or dragging you out to the railway, and then wherever we go, you never know what's going to happen to you. But when it does go back, whenever it does go back to full capacity, that first day promises to be something special, doesn't it?
That's what I'm thinking now. I'm just thinking that feeling when we turn up for the first match in a full stadium. It's going to be something special. It really is. It's going to, that the emotions that day are going to be running high, and the atmosphere is going to be fantastic. And, it's just something to look forward to. We can't do anything about the current situation. It is what it is. We've just got to live with it and hope that it gets resolved as quickly as possible. But when this is all over, it will give us all, I think, a renewed appreciation of our match days. That's for sure. Of course, we've spoken about the match day experience, and I guess in keeping with the spirit of the Twitter question answers, we haven't actually discussed Saturday's match yet, but there is actually a 90-minute match to be played. We will be watching it on our laptops as usual, and it's against Birmingham City, Matt, a team who we beat twice last season, reasonably comfortably, certainly comfortably the first time round, bit more of a stress the second time round. But they are, like us, a team who won their opening game 1-0. Theirs was probably a more impressive result than ours. They beat Brentford 1-0 for the second season in a row. Actually, they've opened their season with a 1-0 win against Brentford. As you'd expect, the stats suggest that they were under the cosh for quite some time. And, if this game was being decided by XG, then they probably wouldn't have got the 3 points. But that's what Birmingham are good at and have been good at for the last few years, isn't it, Matt? They are perfectly capable of getting points out of games where they don't really appear as if they should be getting any.
And I think maybe Aitor Karanka will help with that as well, because he's not playing necessarily playing Graham Potter style football.
No.
He's quite defensive. He's quite happy for the opposition to have the ball. He keeps a solid team there, and the clean sheet against Brentford speaks volumes that he is very kind of solid at the back, and he likes to build up from there. So it's a cracking win for them, and fingers crossed it is a playoff final hangover for Brentford. Not that I have any ill feeling towards their manager, their players, or the club in general.
No,
Sky
not at all.
Sports or Talk Sport or no, only joking.
That would be petty, Matt. That would be petty.
It would be extremely
We're not
petty, wouldn't it?
on this podcast.
I'll have to hurry up. I've got 20 things I need to say about Brent. No, I'm only joking. I think it's a cracking win, isn't it? And people, we all listed them in our top 3, and we'll see how the season pans out. But it's to get them early doors and to put one over on them, will give them a massive boost. So and give Karanka a big boost as well. So they're going to be a different outfit to the one we played under Pep Clotet last season. They're going to have a little bit of probably a more solid shape to them, but it'll be it's a game where we will go into it favourites, and we should go into it favourites, and we should be aiming to start our home season, if we can call it home season this year, with a win, and that's from a team that hopes and expects to be in and around the playoffs, or certainly the top half of the league this season again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you were speaking there about Aitor Karanka. Some of his teams have made Paul Clement Swansea look like 2011 Barcelona. It was.
Was I not nasty enough by calling him defensive?
Oh, honestly, I mean, Karanka is genuinely he is perfect for Birmingham, really, because he is not afraid to just park the bus, play it very, very conservatively, and just hope to snatch a win, really. I mean, it's not great to watch any of his teams, really. But you spoke there about wanting to start the season with a win, and obviously people always think that their home form is where they should be best, really, and you want to turn your home stadium into a fortress. That's probably less a factor during a worldwide pandemic when fans aren't allowed into stadiums, and we've already seen, I think, patterns across the world where home advantage is not what it used to be. And in fairness, Matt, last season home advantage wasn't really a thing for Swansea, because if you look at we won, I think, 10 home games in the regular season out of 23, which isn't particularly great. It's not really playoff form. I mean, when you look at the best home records in the division, you had Leeds, Brentford and Fulham, the 3 teams that went up, followed by Cardiff. Derby had a good record, but West Brom is there as well. So I said Brentford went up. Brentford obviously did not go up, as we have established.
That was just nasty. I mean,
as we have established. But the Swans were very much mid-table when you look at the home form across the division. We picked up 36 points, which is only a point. 35 points, which is exactly what we picked up away. So there was no difference really between our home form and away form last season, which is very rarely the case. I mean that's probably got to change, hasn't it? This season, we're not going to be able to get away with it this season again, I would imagine.
It's interesting. I think that again that plays into Cooper's style of play a lot, in that the way he's set up, we were difficult to beat on the road, and teams when you're playing at home, you're expected to have the impetus, you're expected to try and win the game. The fans turn up, they pay their money, they want to see you go for it. Unlike when you're away and the fans turn up, they travel the length and breadth of the country to see you, but there's a different expectation there then. They don't expect you to turn up in someone else's backyard and blow them away, but you go there, you cheer the boys on after having a few drinks through the day. I don't want to divulge back into football traditions and stuff again, but you go there and you hope that you can put on a performance and you hope you can get a result, and that's what your ambition is. But when you're at home, there's an expectation level there. And Cooper's an inspiring setup, if you like, then played into that. And that's probably why we had as good a away record last season as home record. And I do think, actually, that the lockdown helped us. We got a young team, a team that was maybe affected somewhat, maybe, to the discontent in the stands. It wasn't that interesting in the middle of last season, was it? And you can understand a few people just getting fed up of watching what they were seeing on a weekly basis. So I think maybe having the lockdown, playing behind closed doors, allowed the players to express themselves a little bit more. And massive change in formation, which helped a lot as well. But and it's still helping. But certainly, it's something that we'll be looking at this year and seeing how that pans out, because I think maybe it will level out now and people will start addressing home games and away games in the same manner. You go on away game, if you're playing at home, whatever, and you're going in and you're going, right, let's get in early doors, let's put a stamp of authority on the game, let's be hard in the tackle, let's make sure we dominate. When you're away, you don't want to do that early doors, because you've got 20,000 plus home fans then screaming for a red card after 4 minutes, and every decision they're going to be baying for blood, and the refs, don't question the professionalism, but you do see refs give decisions for home teams than away teams. You do see it.
It's instinctive. It's down to that human nature where you're influenced by, without knowing it, you are influenced by atmospheres.
Was that a bad challenge? I didn't really get a great angle, but people are screaming. The bench is jumping up and down. The manager's on the pitch. You see things like that, and you think, maybe he's got to go with this. And obviously we don't have VAR in the Championship, but you do get influence, as you say. Yeah. So I think now teams are going to address away games differently. Now that there's no fans there, they can look at it and they can go, well, do you know what? We had one with Kalulu last season, didn't we? Towards the end of last season. I can't remember who it was against.
Was it Middlesbrough?
Yeah, he should have gone, shouldn't he?
Oh my God, that was ridiculous. In fairness, the referee in that game should not have needed a baying crowd to tell him that was a red card. That's still one of the most mad failures to send off a player that I've ever seen. I mean, it was the most blatant of red cards. Even Wyndham Evans thought there should have been a red card. I mean, that tells you everything. Yeah. I mean, there are some games down the Liberty where the referee could be standing in the centre circle and he'd feel spittle from the fans brushing his face. Fans can get that wound up and that angry, and it's bound to put the referee under pressure. Likewise, though, fans can get like that about their own team, and it's an uncomfortable truth from this lockdown. There's some teams feel better playing without the pressure from their own fans, and I think possibly we do fit into that category. Well, we did last season anyway, because the fans at their best were not really doing much to really rise the players to the occasion on in many matches, and at their worst, it could be quite toxic in matches. It was quite an uncomfortable atmosphere down the Liberty for a lot of matches last season, and when you do have a young team like that, it clearly didn't help them. And it's not. I think the Swans were the kind of team that you would have expected to do better in the kind of sanitized environment that we now have. And that the fact that is continuing for the foreseeable future, who knows, may prove to be a bit of an advantage. Now, one of the decisions that Aitor Karanka's got to make this weekend is whether he sticks with Zach Jeacock in goal, who is, I think, about 19 years old, played his first game against Brentford and had an absolute storming game, or whether he changes to Neil Etheridge, newly signed from Cardiff, and a player who has very bad memories of his last visit to the Liberty Stadium, Matt.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Etheridge, isn't he? Because he's a very good goalkeeper at this level, isn't he? And I think people, he'll have bad memories, but I think no one will call him a bad keeper. I didn't actually realise that Birmingham had played a youngster in goals against Brentford, which again is more of a testament to Karanka's setup, I guess, as well. I'm intrigued by that one. I'm interested to see whether they do revert to the experience then of Etheridge in the goal, or whether they stick, because he's a good acquisition for them, I think.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Usually when you buy a new keeper, he goes in no matter what. You buy him to be number one, and you think, okay, I bought him to be the number one. I don't care how the backer played last game. He's going in, but we'll see. Maybe he'll have to sit this one on the bench. But I mean, look at the Birmingham team. It's traditionally very, very conservative. Their midfielders are there to break up play, etc. Not really full of footballers, but there may be a few more in this team than usual. I mean, Jeremy Bella scored a goal against Brentford. He's not a bad player. Lucas Judkovic will score against. He's got the capacity to score against anybody in this division if you give him supply. And Ivan Sanchez was the man of the match in that match, and he does look like he's got the capacity to give them a little bit more flair, a little bit more intelligence in attack. So, Birmingham are going to be full of confidence after that result, Matt. Do you think that they pose a threat coming to the Liberty on Saturday?
Oh, I suppose the old cliche is anything can happen in the Championship, isn't it? But I don't think they come into it favourites. I don't think they come into it 50-50. I think we go into it favourites, and I think rightly so, given the way our season ended last year on such a high. I know we lost in the semi-finals, but I don't think any of us really were that heartbroken over it, because the better team beat us. But it was one of those things that we didn't even expect to be there. But the run up to it, to get there, was something quite special. And obviously we started this season, forgetting the pre-season friendly we played the week before. We started this season with a win, and so tails will be up. The new players will want to impress. They want to keep showing what they've got. There was, like we talked earlier at the start of the podcast, a nice link-up play between some of the new players, and they're complementing each other. As Gibbs White looks to feed low and AU, you've got Corey Smith doing the dirty work behind them. So as we were talking about earlier on, there's complementary traits to be found in there. I don't want to over-egg it, because obviously Birmingham will pose, will be a dangerous team. They will look to get something from the game, absolutely. But I think we should be looking to win this one, and it's the sort of game that you don't want to be slipping up on early doors, because later on you'll be licking your wounds and counting points you dropped elsewhere, and Birmingham haven't had the best of times in the last few years in the Championship, I'd say. So unless their form over the season dramatically picks up, they'll be one of the teams that people will identify to pick up points from, and certainly we should be.
Yeah, Birmingham were one of the teams I tipped for relegation this season. So, that win against Brentford definitely goes against that narrative. I'd like to think that we could beat them, Matt, but we'll go on to the predictions. as anybody really could have predicted before the season started, I, after one game, am bottom of the prediction table, aren't I?
You are, yeah. This is it. We may as well stop it. We could pack it in now if you want, because I got one right. So I'm just like done. I'm going to close it off. I got the prediction right for Preston. They predicted 1-0 for that. Steve predicted a 2-1 win. So he got the correct result. And you predicted a draw. So a bit harsh, really, because you were only one goal off it, but obviously not with the right result or right score. So you do... unfortunately, you just hit the post with that, I think, and it's left you bottom of the table. But we're one game in, aren't we? Well, actually, we're 2 games in because we did the Newport one as well. But like I say, it's a glorified pre-season friendly, that wasn't it? So we won't hold that against anyone.
So let me hear your prediction then for Saturday's match.
I'm going to predict 2-1 win for us in this one.
I think it's going to be another tight one, another one where it's not going to be very pretty. I'd like to think the fact that we're at home gives us a bit more of an advantage as a setting that we're more comfortable in. And I'd like to think that we can snatch a 1-0 win, a second in a row. So that's what I'm going to go for. But I was very, very tempted to say a draw just to keep... I said draw last week and it resulted in a win. I'm one for patterns and superstitions. So, but I am actually going to put my head on the block and say 1-0 win to the Swans, and you can all blame me on Saturday when we lose 3-0.
The only reason I said 2-1 because I was going to go 1-0, but I think Jukovic is going to score. In fact, I will say it's going to be a 2-1, and Birmingham's goal will be Jukovic, and that's how I see it going. I think we'll probably go 2-0 up, and then he'll grab one back, and it'll leave us for a nervy last 8 or 9 minutes of the game. That's how I envisage it being, but I think we'll just scrape over the line. But unfortunately, I do see them grabbing one because, as you say, he can score with the right service and against anyone.
Yeah. Well, Steve hasn't given us a prediction this week either. So
I think he did, didn't he? Or did he? My phone battery's dead. Did he say 1-0 on our Twitter group?
Oh, yeah, actually, he has. He's gone for a 1-0 prediction, so same as me. So, he goes into into his predictions are recorded for this week as well. So we'll
before we wrap the podcast up, there was news today about Joel Osoro leaving on loan as well, wasn't there? Which we probably should mention before the podcast is out, because.
I mean, the fact is, it's not noteworthy, really, is it? Because he's had so little impact since he arrived. I think with Joel Osoro, perhaps if he'd been, handled a bit differently, perhaps if he'd gone to a different club, I don't know, he may have turned into a better footballer. And I don't think actually he's a bad footballer. I think people say he's much worse than he actually is. I think he's still got potential, and he's still very, very young. I think he's only about 20, 21 still. I think he's 21 now, isn't he? Which is still quite young, So he's gone on loan to Genoa. We'll have to see how he goes there. Who knows? He may set the world alight there, and we'll decide that we want to then make the best use of him when he comes back. But
I think he's got they've got an option to buy at the end of the loan for, I think it was 600 grand or something like that. I can't remember the exact figure, but
I think we spent 2 million on him, didn't we?
Did. And I think anyone who's watched him is probably going to accept that we're going to take a loss on him. But again, like you rightly said, he could turn out and have a great time. It does seem to be, though, that under this era of these players, that if they don't perform here and they go away, they tend to fall off the edge of a cliff, and we never hear of them again. Which is disappointing. It just seems to be a trend at the moment. Whether or not their confidence is knocked or whatever, but we'll see what happens with him. I hope for his sake he gets his verve back, because he's gone out to Italy, hasn't he?
Yeah. I think he's got potential. I've always said I think Asora's got potential. We bought him when he was very, very raw, and unfortunately, I think that rawness is still apparent in his play. I don't think he's really I don't know, honed his craft really. I don't think he's really matured enough as a player to threaten our first team. Unfortunately, he is still that little speedy headless chicken that we bought. So unfortunately, that's. But hopefully, of course, he goes to Italy and develops there and turns into a better player. But we'll have to wait and see. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a very varied podcast, actually. Join us again next week when we'll be looking back at what will hopefully be a Swans win against Birmingham, if our predictions are to be believed. But seeing as we've all predicted a win, it's more likely to be a negative one, let's face it. But we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it's another positive result to build on. A great start to the season for the Swans. Until next time, thank you very much.